Are poker players playboys? Denied a very attractive women sex by pushing them off me. I had to force them off me. And the only main area for which I was really a bit uncertain about was sex. Anyway, so that's what's been on my mind lately. I have not solved exactly what I should personally do with my complicated logistics problem with dating, but I can tell you from my own personal experience, and as I'm trying to figure out how to do this properly, I think there's a few features of modern society that totally make this broken. Hey guys, it's Jungle Man, aka Daniel Cates, and I've got a quick announcement regarding the Jungleverse, which is that upon our soft launch, we're giving you all the tools that you need to get better at poker, the support you need, and the community required for both advanced and beginner players. We're also helping to make your life easier in all kinds of different ways by creating a jobs board, a justice system, and more, and a tool for rakeback. Just click the link below to join and take a look at what we've got. Remember, it's absolutely free, and the Jungleverse is here to help. Are poker players playboys? I don't really think so. I think this idea comes from Dan Bilzerian, which we're going to bust a lot of myths related to Dan Bilzerian, one of which is that most poker players are totally not like him in all kinds of ways. And also, like, he did not grind his way up from the beginning. That is not true. He already had money and found a way to make himself successful from it. I actually had a bit of an opportunity to live like him, and did in fact live like him, which was a very interesting experience. I had a situation where there were 20 girls on like a boat, and it was me and like 3 other guys. The idea was we were going to rig the situation so that girls would more likely find us more attractive, because the perception is often based off of like, it's more of an experiential route rather than looking at like absolute truths and something like that. This is more the emotional route to perceive things. And not everyone's like this. Everyone's like this to varying degrees or whatever. And this led to all kinds of things like women fighting over each other and to get with us. And I even like pushed someone off me. I denied a very attractive women's sex by pushing them off me. I had to force them off me. It actually drove me crazy, by the way, to be on this yacht after about 3 or 4 days. I had thought, fuck, I want to get the fuck off this yacht. I was in the middle of the Maldives on a yacht with a bunch of girls, and I probably could have, I could have slept with many of them, and I didn't want to, actually. It converged very fast, where I tended to pick only one, pretty much, which is a funny thing. And actually, for some reason, we all tended to do something along these lines eventually, or most of us. Many of the people that operated this little social experiment did, in fact, get married as a bizarre result. I don't even 100% understand why, but even the guys who built this thing just ended up getting, like, basically locked down. In addition, as I was trying to pitch this to other poker players, there were not very many takers, and I never really understood why. But I can say that from seeing many of the guys who aren't high stakes and that are around a lot and they're like consistent winners, I know lots of these guys because I played online, I play in tournaments. It's a very competitive space. It's very merit driven, meaning there isn't so much cheating and stuff like that in order to make money. In my opinion, there's various forms of cheating, but there's not much of it going on. It's just who's ever the best wins. Most of these guys just have girlfriends, man. They're not just out there screwing around. And let me tell you, they don't have the personality types that gather a lot of women for the most part. They're kind of introverted and shy and not that charismatic, generally speaking. Yeah, it doesn't really look like there are too many playboys in there. I will say also another funny thing is I actually originally, when I first wanted to date, when I was a teenager, I wanted to just find a life partner. And then that illusion got completely shattered by basically my ass getting handed to me by the girls I wanted not wanting me back. So I was like, well, I guess I'm supposed to get better. And also, the conventional advice was to date around so that you no longer gain feelings for somebody, which doesn't appear to be true in my experience, by the way. So this is what kind of drove me towards being a bit more, dating quite a lot more in general, and then like realizing, wait a second, I could be interpreted as a player in certain contexts, or a playboy in certain contexts, in certain situations. But I realized, well, wait, it looks like many of the conditions of society and what my own perception of what was good for me drove me to do things that were questionably good, you can say, or at least drove me towards a different path. And I think a lot of guys have kind of gone down this route, and some of them have just like kind of perpetually, just straight up become the playboys. Anyway, so that's what's been on my mind lately. I have not solved exactly what I should personally do with my complicated logistics problem with dating. I'd rather just pick someone specifically, but it's not that simple for all kinds of reasons. And here we are. Why is it better to go for a single partner versus a plethora of partners? Well, here's the thing. Okay, so in theory, yes, better to go for a single partner versus a plethora of partners, because if you and your partner can be directed towards purpose, then you are now becoming much more productive overall. And this is easily seen in research, actually, or maybe not easily, but it is seen. An anthropologist, J.D. Unwin, wrote a book called Sex and Culture that covered 80 cultures over 5,000 years of history and found that promiscuity absolutely destroyed nations over the course of 2 to 3 generations, which we're now seeing, some of the byproducts of plus technology happening as well with Tinder and Instagram and all this shit in the mainstream world as a result of the sexual revolution in the I believe the 1950s or so, the baby boomer generation. Yeah, apparently it's happened in other cultures as well, which I need to study more about. But it turns out that the most beneficial thing for society is monogamy, and even not so ideal monogamy or kind of fake monogamy is not that optimal. It even leads towards promiscuity. Now, this is what's theoretically optimal, but I can tell you from my own personal experience, and as I'm trying to figure out how to do this properly, I think there's a few features of modern society that totally make this broken. And I wonder about the solution to many of these problems myself. But basically, I found that if we're going to be deciding on who our life partner is, it's going to be a very difficult thing. And I can say that a lot of the women that I've met are not particularly aligned with the purpose that I have, or there's a few different issues going on. I mean, maybe a couple of them would be, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to pick someone who I'm not wildly attracted to. And then, there's all kinds of logistical problems. And then there's all kinds of at which point do you not care about certain details, and which details should you care about? Should you care about how intelligent they are? Should you care about to what extent they can travel with you? Should you care about how much they pay attention to their fitness? How much should you care about how attracted to you they are, attracted to them they are? How much should you care about how good of a partner they are? Or how much should you care about to what extent they're doing something with their lives? Should you even care about that? Or do you want to pick someone who's a compliment to you? It looks to me, at least the last question, you do want to pick someone who complements what you do. So the answer to this question is actually very complicated and would represent the merger between the Western mentality and the Eastern mentality, or more like a mentality based off of what is in India, which basically is on the opposite end of the extreme Western mentality. Western mentality has a lot to do with picking for short-term gratification, what excites you, that sort of thing. And India is the stone opposite, where the parents pick who you marry, and you don't really have a whole lot of say in it. But I guess they focus on more long-term traits or something. The divorce rate in India is less than 1%, and in comparison, the divorce rate in the U.S. is between 40 to 50%. And let's not talk about how many long-term relationships and things like that are broken, etc. as well. So it merged these two sorts of ideas of maximizing for your enjoyment of life plus what's long-term beneficial and purpose. Seems like quite a complicated thing. If you think about it, this is the utopian ideal, but maybe it's possible. And I'm out there exploring, and that's kind of my thing. So I like the extremes and like to find the perfect balances between both sides of the coin to find the optimal reality. That's kind of the theme of this channel, to win the game of life, to find the perfect solution. The biggest distractor for my work was unquestionably basically pursuing women. If we're adding up all the time for going on dates, which is 3 hours, etc., and not to mention the money spent, guess what, guys? Women cost money in some kind of way. So it was not even close. And so this kind of really got me toying around with the idea of curtailing my sexual desire, or thinking very deeply about how to balance that with my work. And especially considering when I looked in the past religions and I considered about the optimal reality. By the way, at a certain point, religion does blend very, very well with philosophy, even the Greek variations of philosophy and from the philosophies from Spinoza and Immanuel Kant, etc. If you look, they actually do blend very, very well if you know what you're looking for anyway. And if you look for similarities and not get caught up on arbitrary differences, these philosophies and ancient religions seem to universally come to conclusions that perfectly outlined the optimal reality or the optimal social strategy for oneself and for dealing with other people. And the only main area for which I was really a bit uncertain about was sex. And I thought, that's interesting. That was really the main issue that I personally had. So I thought, well, probably they're right about that, if I had to guess, if they're right about literally everything else, there were some extreme examples, and I wasn't able to find too many how-to variations of why X or why people are so wildly against promiscuity. This is what got me to reading into J.D. Unwin and sex and culture and these kinds of things. And so I was able to get an answer, basically. And it seems to boil down to a lot of sex is just for the sake of enjoyment, let's really be honest, in Western culture. And I don't really think it's that much different, if we're really honest, from masturbation in a huge percent of circumstances. Even though many players may think otherwise, I still think it boils down to enjoyment and ego. There's a guru that I really like named Ravi Shankar who basically says that lust is just unrestrained energy, nothing more. And this makes a lot of sense to me, looking at like how much energy is directed towards sex and dating and things like that versus just doing the work that you have to do. This just makes total sense because the energy has to go somewhere, right? And thinking about it like that, it made me think I really should get over this or figure out some kind of way of making this efficient in order for the sake of my work and to not get too strung up about it. But for the rest of us guys out there, we know how this might be incredibly difficult, especially if you do have some options or whatever, or maybe have access to the internet. It's easy to not justify, think, oh, how bad is a little bit of this or that? Well, it gets you down the rabbit hole of good or bad, and it's like can go to the point of like, well, why not more? At least this was the thought processes going on in my head. For me, my mind would beg the question of where is the line between too much and not? And if I was to indulge a little bit, my mind would go, what about more? And this would be really what would be going on in my mind like all the time in all my decisions. Thinking about a lot of this, I did eventually come to the conclusion that I really need to tamper this somehow and find a way to make this efficient, finding the balance between lust and purpose and to not let it control myself. The advice that I would give someone to get over lust and to figure out what they should do is probably not exactly what you'd think, because sometimes I think indulging is better than trying to control it, or indulging in like controlled circumstances is better than trying to control it 100% if you're like not at all capable of controlling it, which I think a lot of people in today's world are not going to be able to, because basically it's like a drug addiction, right? And you're constantly surrounded by fucking, the equivalent of heroin or whatever in a click. And so what I would do is set like some kind of control measures of sorts to limit the exposure a little bit, because it's going to be extremely difficult, especially at a young age, to master their sexual desire like the hardest of things. I don't think it's a good idea to set the bar so high that no one's going to be able to achieve it. That would become pointless. So what I do is set it to become manageable and keep pushing it further and further to when it gets high, or especially when we're talking about doing things that are also stressful, I think it's good actually to indulge a little bit, because to become maximally efficient at something, when you really think about it, is fucking impossible. Not even like a small percent are going to reach it, but if we're having a really strict definition of it, it's fucking impossible. But it can be possible to get to the point of continuously going towards it. And this, by the way, is in the Christian religion, where it says something like, thou shalt not sin, or humans are always going to sin. Well, I mean, I guess that's true. It's either almost always true or always true. And the definition in this case would be, by sin would literally be error, which would mean to do something like indulging and do something that's technically not good for yourself. That's really the definition of what it is. I just find that it's far most practical to set lines that are reachable rather than set lines that are you're 100% to fail at. This is true also in the gym. This is true also in poker. You want to push yourself a little bit all the way. You don't want to go too crazy with it. When I was young, I realized this later, but I was fortunate that I didn't have very many sexual options, so it was shut off to me. So I was not like spending lots of time with dating, and I didn't have like the wisdom to be able to navigate it. And because of this, I was able to focus on poker, and this is part of what made me very rich, is that all I had to fucking do was focus on poker. And because I was able to obsess over this one thing and not have to decide, oh shit, these girls are not good for me kind of thing, and that I have all these options and be just running around with my dick in my hands, then I just made my life ultimately simpler. It was a hard thing to see. It was almost impossible to see that in the moment. So for others, I would say it's better to not get too carried away with going deep down the rabbit holes of figuring out how to get like the perfect like partner kind of thing. A lot of the time it's too high of a barrier anyway. To focus on purpose slowly at a time, and then focus on fixing yourself once that's comfortably within comfortably handled so that you can live your life well. Okay, so when we're thinking about dealing with life, if we have to decide between focusing on women first or focusing on purpose first, I'm a bit biased, but I would choose focusing on purpose first. Here's the reason why. So first of all, you guys may guess that unless you're incredibly good looking or tall or whatever the fuck it is, or incredibly charismatic somehow, I guess that also works, you're probably not going to do that well with women if you're not very successful, or at least even if you have those traits, by the way. And I know a couple guys that are kind of like that. They can still dump you if your life's not sorted. That's totally a thing. So it helps to have your money in order to have some kind of success and your whole situation in the first place. Not to mention, probably overall, it's better to have this sort of than to sweat over bills and to wonder what's going to happen with your life and have these social pressures of thinking people think you're a loser and blah, 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 and your own inner pressures thinking, fuck, why am I not successful? Like, I would imagine that's a worse situation than not getting laid all the time or the total access to women that you could potentially have or whatever, the girlfriend that you really want or whatever the hell it is. Yeah, if I had to guess, that I would think that going for the purpose is better. To be able to be free and do what you want is really a powerful thing. In theory, when you follow your purpose, it's supposed to attract the right woman along. I have a personal opinion of why this didn't really work out for me only playing poker. It's because I think that playing poker by itself, if all you're doing is playing poker, it's not really your purpose. If you think about it, there's not a whole lot of purpose written in that by itself. I view poker as a bit more of like a training grounds of sorts. It's like a mind sport to train various virtues within yourself and to bring them out. Because it does challenge you in all kinds of ways. It challenges you to manage your money. It challenges you to risk in smart ways. It challenges you to take courage. It challenges you to take action, to find the best opportunities. It challenges you to find the truth in like a sea of variance. It's very hard. It challenges you to put up with various, people talking shit or whatever it is, or other kinds of social pressures. It challenges you for temptations to cheat. All kinds of things, but by itself, there's not really a purpose in it. So I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't really find a girl from poker alone, really. Not easily anyway. And I also think that there's a certain subtlety of the duality of poker is that a lot of people, and everyone really to a degree in poker, is making money off of people who have aspects of degeneracy in a way. So it does have an element of preying on people. And these people go to places where vice is kind of the king, right? So like Las Vegas and Macau, etc. And these places aren't really that great places to meeting quality people. And so it occurred to me at some point, well, I'm making my money off these people to some degree because I'm chasing these people and because this is where my living comes from. Hidden aspect of duality is that I don't find so many wholesome people here by itself unless the conditions of the poker environment are changed. And I realized, okay, this is actually subtly my fault that I've decided to make money the easy way so I don't find so many wholesome people. And so I realized, well, maybe there's a way of making poker more wholesome, actually, because there are many wholesome things about it, and that to expand my interests a little bit beyond poker. And so this is a little bit of foray into how I got involved in spirituality and other things in order to solve this problem. But subtly, what I'm getting at here is that by focusing only on poker and by going after money from people making mistakes, it subtly hurts your purpose in a way and makes it harder to find women, rightfully so. If the environment of the poker situation is kept this way, women tend to be attracted to positive environments and environments that have good energy around them or good vibe. Poker does not have a good vibe overall, except in the Jungleverse though. Jungleverse is changing all that. Jungleverse is coming to you. Jungleverse, everything turns around on its head, actually. And this is also a call to action for the poker players. If we want more quality experiences, quality people, women, etc. in our poker world, we need to change it so that the environment is such that people want to be in it. This is where we have to figure out ways to help our other aspects of our life when it comes to poker. And that's a big goal of what we're trying to do in the Jungleverse, by the way. We are trying to change the environment so that everyone's happy, everyone wins, even though there are losers, like people that objectively lose, not actual losers, people that objectively are losing. We're trying to make their lives better too. And this is part of what's really important in poker, giving the recreational players and like people who have not had a great experience in terms of winning, a great experience otherwise. That's a very important thing for poker. Let me talk about the optimal partner for a second, because, there's this idea of like a soulmate, blah, 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 does this exist, etc. I could talk about it. So I'll first mention the spiritual suggestion And a big thing of mine is to unite logic with spirituality because I'm extremely rational, but I'm also have some subtle and compelling feeling towards spirituality for a lot of reasons. But the spiritual suggestion is you have a lot of soulmates and you have one twin flame. So soulmates are basically people that have a lot of similarities to you and that you therefore get along with pretty well. They help you grow a bit because, well, everyone does and everyone's not perfect. And the more differences between you, the more that dealing with this person or being forced to deal with this person makes you grow, right? Because unless you really want a shitty experience and neither of you are cooperating, then you're forced to grow to make that experience better over time, or at least it's naturally going to happen because you're naturally drawn to what's good. And the soulmates, generally speaking, you won't have so many issues because they're similar. That to reiterate. Now, the twin flame is what's supposed to be your ideal partner in a way, sort of, but maybe not, at least not for a long time. But in this relationship, the idea is it's your equal version of you, but your opposite. Imagine like on one of the ends of being your opposite kind of person. I don't know which opposite it would be, but your opposite in terms of your gender, not like your arch enemy or something. That would be the opposite end, or that would be like the opposite end of your gender would be this way, and the opposite end of your arch enemy would be in this direction. But this person would have the opposite tendencies of you, and would also have but be equal to you in those magnitudes of those tendencies. So if you were very logical, they'd be very emotional, and if you were very pensive, they would be very quick to judge, that kind of thing. Or if you were very introverted, they'd be very extroverted. And you can see how this might lead to lots of different kinds of clashes of sorts. And this person, the relationship, or if there was one, would be very tumultuous. But if you were to get through all those, then be able to process all those dualities and differences, the ways that were mature, basically overcome your shadow side in many different aspects, then theoretically it might be possible to have a relationship with this person. The Jungleverse is a free community that gives you the tools that you need to both crush, get support from, and the right community in order to succeed in poker in your kind of way. In addition to tools that help you to get better at poker, we've got tools that help make your life easier in a difficult world, such as a justice system, a community that supports you, rakeback tools, and maps to help you find the best games. And remember here, guys, the Jungleverse is here to help you. Just click the link below. It's absolutely free, and let's all win together.